I'm Ritesh from PRM21. And as you know, every month we have at least one alum from our IRMA community who comes and share their, professional experience or skills or just memories from IRMA. Today, we have Rini from PRM39. She is based in France and she is going to speak on a very, very unusual topic which we never had in the last at least 3 years of our these sessions. It's the topic is the drift, why every system you think is stable is already failing. And we are also happy that from Rini's batch, we have Pratik who would be moderating this session. So thank you, Pratik, and thank you, Rini. I will hand over the session to you. Please take over. Thanks.
Thank you, Ritesh sir.
Thank you.
Hello, namaskar, adab, kem cho, sat sri akal, khamagani and ram ram to all the Irmans and dear audience for taking your valuable time to join this session. I, Pratik Wankhede, fellow Irman batch 39, welcome you all to the IRMA Alumni Association's Irman Talk. So generally, we see that the talks are on political discussions, new digital technologies, and experience sharing by different experts who are working in different fields. But this talk is about a book which Ritesh sir already said, The Drift, which is written by our fellow Irman and today's speaker, Dr. Rini Modi. So I will be talking more about the book as we move ahead. But let me first introduce you all to our speaker. So after completing her graduation in economic honors from Delhi University, Rini, so I won't be calling her doctor now. Uh, she stepped into a beautiful rural manager's journey at IRMA Anand in 2018. Her command and expertise in research studies helped her to get an internship with IVMI, wherein uh, through her on-field experience, she gained the idea of writing a book. So Rini had also worked with the ICICI Bank as a product manager for 2 years before shifting to France after her marriage, where she completed her DBA, doctoral in business administration, from the Paris School of Business. So Rini is actually a Indian-born researcher and practitioner, we can say, who is based in France. So her research work sits at the intersection of governance system, organizational leadership, and institutional design, drawing on professional experience across the multiple national contexts, including India and France, and grounded in doctoral research conducted at the Paris School of Business. Her work examines why governance system fails in the specific, predictable, and largely preventable way they do, and what the structural conditions are that allow them to remain honest under pressure. So I would request Rini to please navigate us through these specific governance challenges this book identifies. I have read the book and I will request you to please take us through your wonderful book which you have read written. Thank you.
Thank you, Pratik. And yes, please, no doctor, we are batchmates, so I prefer Rini. Before I move into the book, I want to try something with the audience. We have some 16, 17 participants, so I'm sending a link in the chat. If you all can connect with it, maybe, or if not, you can directly put the answer in the chat, or you can also connect with the QR code. So we have 3 options, and like we'll take 10 seconds, and then I can start with the first one. Like I want to make it a little interactive, so that way we can, I can show you what I have created is not something bookish, not something textbook, but something that actually exists in the world. So, okay, we are having the results. So we have the first question here. Think of a rule at your work that everyone follows, but nobody actually agrees with. So don't explain it, just type in whatever the rule first comes to your mind, whatever the word comes to your mind. Maybe you write your boss name, whatever comes to your mind, just try to put it there. So for now we have 8 respondents, and wow, this is interesting. Okay. Okay. So for now, we have 8 respondents. All of them has responded. If others who have joined just now, if you want to join in, I'm sending the link again. You can join in. Otherwise, you can join from the another next question, and I move ahead with this. Pratik, what do you think? Should I disclose the answers?
Yes,
Okay.
people can join from the QR code also. So we have like 10 respondents are there.
Yes.
Out of 10, 8 have responded. Yeah.
So people are joining. So we don't have a lot of questions, but we'll try to keep it very crisp. Okay.
I think 10 is a good number. We can
Okay,
reveal the
let's see.
answer and
Okay. So what kind of a rule we are looking for? The work from office. Okay, no one likes to do work from office after COVID. It's very okay. Stay backs again, very common, and okay, no one agrees. Don't sleep. Okay, the names are coming. Boss is there. Office timing. 5-day office policy. Travel reimbursement. Cribbing and buttering. Okay. Overworking and discipline order. Okay, very interesting. Let's move to the next question. Now you have to type in just a number from 0 to 10, whatever you feel you think. How much do you trust the last big decision your organization took? No explanation, nothing. Just a decision that was taken, some big change, some big transformation. And how much do you agree? How much do you trust that on the scale of 0 to 10? Okay. I'm sharing the link again if anyone wants to join in. Okay. Should I reveal the number? Let's see what's the population.
7 is a good number.
Yeah, I think people are. Let's see. Okay.
7 and 8.
So when you say 7, 8, 10, that means that you are trusting the big decision or you're not trusting the big decision. Look, like you can mute, unmute, whatever you think. So when you're saying 7, 8, 10, is it like you are trusting or not trusting? Trusting. Okay, people are saying trusting. Okay, very nice. This is a very good thing. So again, we have the range from 2 to 10. Just look at this range. We are all in the same room. We are 20, 21 people here. We are all similar kind of a background, but completely different numbers. The majority is 7, 8. So I'm believing a majority of people are coming from a very well-structured organizations. But look at just what happened. In just under a minute, every one of you kind of found a gap which is happening. For example, if we look at this numbers, this table here, like where what your system says and what you know actually it's true. When your system says work from office is a good rule, but you agree that it's not a very good rule, so we can agree that there is a gap happening in what is actually shown to us and what is actually true. So this gap is not very unusual. That gap is not a sign that something has gone wrong somewhere on the way. That gap is the subject of my entire book. So let me tell you where it all began. Some 8, 9 years back, I was doing field research in the Western India, comparing water supply systems. I went into looking the textbook things. We have the infrastructure problems, we have the funding shortfalls, why the water is not getting supplied, like all the textbook things. Instead, what I found, there were two groups of people. They have quietly given up on each other. One group was the citizens. The citizens stopped paying the water bills, not because they could not. They could easily afford, but they will not do that because they have the history. The government was not improving the water supply. So why would they pay? They were instead doing the private purchasing. They were paying private better water, investing in the RO infrastructure and everything. The other group that gave up was the government. The government said that we started with the full supply. People started wasting water. So why do the full supply? So we'll just supply to the corporates. We'll profit more money, and we stop. So from this thing, who do you think is at the fault? Like, do you have a name to put, like, are the citizens at fault or are the government at fault? For me, from this experience, what stayed with me that both sides were right on their own side. If you want to take a guess, if you want to put in the comments like which side you agree with, the government or the citizens, feel free. So we have a division of where we are standing at the beginning and where we are standing at the end. That will be a very good exercise. Okay. So the citizens were not paying because so for that, because of that reason, the officials' suspicion was justified. Why should I supply? The officials were not delivering, so because of that, citizen suspicions was justified. Why should we pay? Two rational decisions, both taken from a rational point of view, made separately, no communication, just showing us a broken system. Nobody was the villain. Okay, chicken and egg scenario. Okay, everyone was reacting correctly to what they see. Yeah, I'll come back to that. So eventually, it was found with further research and everything that there is something called vertical dilemma, which we'll be discussing ahead with Pratik here, and that is explaining the gap between the top and the bottom, what the top actually sees and what the bottom actually lives. So I want you to notice you did not name it; you just found it on your own, in your own corporate world, in your own atmosphere, in your own education, maybe in your school. So this is not something that is just specific to one sector, which you can find in everywhere. So let's go to another question. You and your team agreed something to change, but did it? So anything could be decided to change, be it like, any process, any product, anything. So you have 4 options that you all agreed and it quickly happened. Decision made, done. The second was the people agreed, but it really did not move. Everything was agreed on paper and that thing. The third was never, no one actually agreed, and the issue or the process or the governance is still there. And fourth, you are in a very high position that you usually takes a decision, and so yeah, whatever you decided, it was implemented. So which category of these things are you in?
We have 5 respondents out of 15 who have joined. It's now
People are
6.
responding, let them think.
So it's actually a good question. People will be more confused, I think.
Let them think. It takes a little more, but a bit of time to think what happened here. Think of scenario. If you are thinking that it depends what kind of process, what kind of thing, then you have a history that sometimes it does not work. Sometimes it works when it is benefiting the other people. So make a decision based on that. Again, I'm not trying to lead you to another a specific point, but just think of it in a general sense of view, not in the or if you're not in this thing, you can comment on the chat also. We are reading all the chat. Let's disclose. Pratik, we have 10.
Yes, we have 10 respondents.
Okay. So this is exactly what the data showed. That there was a harmony among the two sides of this part, no conflict, the same story. Agreement is not the hard part. Acting on the agreement is the hard part because it requires you to trust that the other person will also have. Okay, now you will say that you're talking about the prisoner's dilemma. No, it's not the prisoner's dilemma. I will explain you why it's different from the prisoner's dilemma. And now that trust is exactly which tends to erode first, quietly before anyone else notices. So the book takes this one idea about the acting on agreement is not very easy and follows it everywhere. A single water official in Laos, the farmer cooperative in Karnataka, a tribal irrigation project like Surya Dam project where officials choose to stay in place rather than getting promoted. Drought in Australia, corporate world, like everywhere, you and I, every world that you and I are part of, if where people are quietly running two systems at the same time, just to survive the gap. This thing is happening between what leadership believes is happening and what is actually happening. So different countries, India, France, I have the research from the US, from UK, Australia, different sectors like banking, finance, we have education, I have multiple, I have the lawyers interviews with me. So different sectors, completely different costumes, same structure everywhere, same every single time. So this is what I want you to get into today, not what is broken, but why it breaks the same way everywhere, every time. Even when people involved are capable, you and I are very much capable, still we are breaking. We are in the system which is breaking. Even when nobody is corrupt, I don't think any one of us here is taking under the table money to break the system. And even when everyone in the room genuinely wants to work. So Pratik, I think that is a good start, a good place to start, and I will hand it back to you for the questions.
Yeah. Uh, so thank you, Rini. Thank you for having a good idea about the book, about the case study which you have mentioned in the book from the Surya Dam project, which you mentioned, and the Karnataka Cooperative project, and Vertical Dilemma also you talked in the book. So I will request the audience, if you have any questions to ask, you can put in the chat or you can directly ask. Or else, if you don't have any questions as of now, I will ask Rini a few questions as I have read the book.
I think we can start there, Pratik, and if the questions come in, we can respond in between.
Yeah, okay. So, Rini, your book actually spans everything from the Laotian water headsman to the Surya Dam project, to the Karnataka cooperative case study, which you mentioned in the book, and to the European corporate banking transformation. So, I would like to ask you that as an IRMA alumni, how did your background in the rural management shape your understanding of these universal governance failures?
Okay, nice question. So the story just that I just told you about the 8-9 years ago about the two different groups coming up, that's what the ILMA gave me the eyes to see. We live in a village for 2 months. We have watched, like, I think you and I were in the same cohort that we went to the village. We watched
Definitely.
ourselves that subsidies were getting declared, but they were never getting delivered. We saw the villages which were declared open defecation elimination, but we could still see people defecating openly. So
Yes.
all this trained me to look between the gaps between the official story and the ground reality. When I sat across from these water officials, I sat across from the slum people, from the rich people on the ground, I recognized the gap immediately. I just didn't have a name for it yet. The drift, vertical dilemma, everything, the TRF loop, everything came very, very later. But the thing that itself I saw in the village and then in the field research and then again in the corporate world and everywhere that I looked, I think that's what IRMA gave me, not just the rural context, but to look beyond it, but to have the ability to look at the patterns. And the drift is essentially one of the patterns that I witnessed given in a name.
Okay. So we have one question actually. Manikan Giri sir is asking about where we can find the book. So if you can tell them where we can find your book.
The book is available on Amazon. So it's available on all the countries. The point is, in India, it's Amazon is not providing the hard copy, so I have it on another platform. I will share all the links at the end of the meeting because I will have to send it separately.
So connecting to the question which you are talking about, so your book has one of the case study about Surya Dam project where the people, the project officers, we can say, they do not want to leave their position because they are at such an intersection that they can manage the farmers and the government for the funding which they do. So,
Yeah.
so I would like to ask you that like people usually at the grassroots, they view the governance in very different way from the corporate boardrooms. So what makes this vertical dilemma identical in both the cases?
See, very simple answer that the calculation is same in both these scenarios. You are a human being. You think rationally. You think in a self like whatever you think is self satisfied, like self thought of thing. So all it's always the same question. If I cooperate, will the other side cooperate? The same thing that I talked. So if I'm not sure if the other person is going to cooperate, is it worth the risk? The prisoner's dilemma, but this is not the prisoner's dilemma we are talking here. We are talking the vertical dilemma. So what's the difference? In the prisoner's dilemma, we are at the same level, like both of us are at the same level. There is no hierarchy. No one has the power over the other person. You add the hierarchy to it, you add the power dynamics to it, and you enter the vertical dilemma. When you talk about the government and the citizens, you have a kind of power dynamics that the government can stop the entire public service all of a sudden. So that is the power with them. Yes, they both have a trust dynamics going between them, but that they are not at the same level. If we are as a public, we can choose that if I pay tax and the other person is not paying a tax, should I pay tax? That is a prisoner's dilemma. But when we are talking about the government and the public, we have a hierarchy, and that's where we enter the vertical dilemma. So what is happening in the Suryadam project? The officials didn't stay in the tribal posting because he loved the book. They do not love the work. They are staying there because they know which person to target, who is not going to complain, who is not going to escalate, whose trust they can exploit. And if they are getting transferred, they don't know where they're going to land. Everything has to start from zero. Maybe the people there are not so easy to exploit, and then all the profits that they were pocketing all this while without promotion, all of that gets lost. So in one of the interviews, I heard the same thing. A manager is keeping a client on a false promise of a subsidy next year. The client stays. The relationship is all the way strong that, okay, this year it's not coming, next year I'll get the subsidy. The manager's numbers go up because the clientele is still there. Everything is green. Everyone is happy. Everyone is quietly agreeing. But what they're not agreeing to introduce the truth that the subsidy is not coming, because the trust is an inconvenience for everyone in the room. So the setting changes, be it tribal India, be it a corporate India. The hack changes completely. You are a manager, you are an expert, you are whoever you are, but underneath it's always the same person making the same calculation. If I make a decision, is it going to benefit me in short term or long term? Is it going to cost me? How much is it going to cost me? Is it going to cost me my career? Is it going to cost me my reputation? So all these questions haunt you. And then when enough people in the system makes that calculation at the same level, the system drops quietly, completely, until something breaks, and then all of a sudden, all you can do is you act surprised. So before we go forward, Pratik, I have one more question to ask to the audience, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
So following on what I said, in a system that's falling, who do you think understands it the best? When I explained the falling system, who according to you is the person who understands it the best? There is no right answer, no wrong question. If you want, you don't want to select one option and you want to speak up, you want to give an opinion that no one understands, or this person understands, or all of them understands, feel free. You can put it in the chat. I welcome you to speak and join the discussion. Pratik, what do you think?
So I think the answer is the middle person and the bottom who is receiving them. Maybe I'm confused between two actually.
Okay.
Or we can have option 4 also, as you have rightly mentioned in the book many things about it. Actually,
Actually, partially
when
for
we'll be
me,
reading the book now, I will request like everyone, if you can please read the book, you will be finding very many things similar. Like it's happening in your life, but when you will read the book, you will start going for finding the solution. So for that, you have to read the book. You can't directly jump like at the last chapter of the book or in the middle of the book. So it's very interesting book, which takes you through different stages of your job from the bottom in the junior level to the senior management level.
So someone has written person in the middle maybe as he saw the gaps of expectations. Yes.
Dipanshu Mittal have.
Very, very interesting instinct.
Very interesting, yeah.
For me, I actually saw it once I left the system. I have worked with it at all levels, and I think while I was working, I never thought of it. When I moved out, I was looking at from a researcher point of view. That's when I saw the system failing. Because when you're inside it, you are actually living it. And when you're living it, you don't realize something is falling. So we have 9 respondents out of 17. Is anyone else interested in responding? Or should I just go ahead and show the responses? 5,
We can
4,
go ahead.
3, 2, 1. Okay. We have a tie between the person at the bottom and the person in the middle.
So what's
So
your say?
This is what actually was happening in the research also. The middle person knows everything, but they cannot act at anything. And the bottom people are the first to find that the system is failing, the first one to drift, the first one to stop raising the voice. And but again, just feeling that the system is breaking and naming it that yes, actually it is failing is two different things. So I think we have a good I'm happy with how we are moving forward. So Pratik, back to you.
So, but I would like to add here something like the bottom ones who are there, they know that the system will be failing, but they are mostly they are unheard uh, employees of the organization. So the one who takes the decision, they are the one who should know that the system are failing. So
The
if
question
you
was, who do
can
you
add
think
something on
understands it the best? It
that.
was
Okay.
not who is going to take action.
That-
The question was, who
yes,
understands it the best?
right. Okay. So we'll move ahead with another question. So in your book, Rini, one of your boldest claim is that when trust declines, more communication actively makes things worse, and you call it as cynicism acceleration effect. So can you break down the difference between communication and structural transparency?
Okay. I'll simplify it for you. The cynicism acceleration effect sounds a little heavy. So I'll put it simply. So more communication without real change just speeds up the giving. You keep communicating, and there is nothing changing on. So the trust gets worse faster. People stop believing even quicker. It is like a reverse cycle, the negative loop of TRF. Very quickly, TRF is transparency, trust, feedback cycle, which are reinforcing each other. I'll not go into the model because it will take another 1 year to explain, but very instinctively, just think of it in this way that the transparency, if you have a transparency, it fuels the trust. If you have a trust in the system, you make a quality feedback to the people. And if people who are giving feedback look like the people who are giving feedback, they want a transparency in how you take the feedback and work around it. So the TRF loop, the trust, transparency, and feedback all moves together in a very close cycle. You can move it upward, like everything goes well, or the cynicism acceleration effect just tells you, nothing changes, and you feel with it. So let me start with something simpler. I'll give you an example of what is this effect. You want a birthday cake. You heard like in your town you have only one bakery, and you have heard of all the bad things that can go wrong with that. You have the hygiene problems, you have the packaging problems, you have like delivery problems, everything. Now he calls you and says, okay, I cleaned everything, everything, every utensil, packaging, and everything. You don't have to worry. Just order with me, and everything will be fine. So how do you feel? Will you trust him like after just this one call and he's explaining? Will you trust him, or do you think if he calls you and says, why don't you come in and look around and see for yourself? What about that? When do you think you would be more in a better position to trust him? Over a call or after a visit?
So if we can, I can visit his shop and see the hygiene level, then it will be more better than just on a call.
So you have the same information. He's saying the same thing on the phone, but you need that transparency to trust that person,
Just
to
yeah,
trust
just
that communication. So it's completely different experience. I'll give you one another example. I think there are people here with the children. When you think about a child's daycare, or if you have pets, if you think about your pet's daycare, would you send your child or a pet based on the owner's description of the facilities, or would you like to go ahead and walk through it yourself? Or maybe just go very simple, go back to the school. Okay, we'll talk about a maths problem and we'll talk about AI. You have a maths problem you're not able to solve, maybe integration, differentiation. You are stuck, you put it in the AI, and the AI gives you the final answer that after everything, it's not giving you steps, after everything this is the result coming. Are you satisfied with that, or do you want, like, I don't want the face value, I want the steps. How did you do it? I want to know how you did it. Is this answer correct or not? So this is the basic difference between the communication and the structural transparency. Communication is just telling you, okay, this exists. The structural transparency gives you a visibility. It lets you see the kitchen. So now
right.
what happens when an organization has a trust problem? Almost always more meetings, bi-weekly become weekly, more emails, more leadership visibilities. In most of these meetings nothing gets worked. If an issue is getting raised, it gets redirected, someone is getting blamed, and meeting ends at the high level like everything was good, but at the end I don't think anyone who wanted to change or who was there to raise a problem found a solution. They come with a real concern, they have a meeting, and the next time they're like, it's not worth it, they don't bother raising it again. So that's not an attitude, that's a very rational decision. Why bother wasting energy when it's not going to work? So system taught them that it's the history of the structure, interference, the structure, like everything around it, that if you raise issues, it's going to increase the meetings, that's going to block you in your own work. There are not going to be any solutions. More communication without showing the kitchen does not build trust. It confirms that there is no kitchen to show. So I don't think if the audience agrees with me, what is your stand in it? It's a finding that
Yeah,
I
I
found.
have actually experienced the same thing. Like when you raise the question uh, to your seniors about like I have this question which I want to ask, like in the town hall, if I want to ask. So before like that, many companies they take the questions from the employees, and I have often experienced that the HR managers or they call the employees and they discuss beforehand with them before answering it in the town halls. So then what happens is that employees become silence. They become silent. So actually, my question is on the same line. So, in a crisis, like, isn't silence worse if a leader can't share like the full logic of decisions due to regulatory or the competitive reasons? What should they do instead of just communicating general reassurance? So, do you have any solution for the?
So first thing, again in my book also there is no solution. I'm talking about what steps can be taken, because every situation is a different, so there is no solution.
Definitely.
But generally, yes, I agree that silence is bad. When there is no answer, your head fills with the gaps, something worse than the truth and everything. So silence is bad, but there is something more dangerous than the silence. That's dismissal. Like someone is coming up with you a question, with a query, and you're treating it as very unimportant. So that's something which is more dangerous. If you cannot answer a question just because of a regulation, or because you don't have an answer, or because it's actually very complicated, just say that, face it, take the time, come back with something real. When you never do, like, what you should never do is like make the question seem irrelevant, because the moment you do that, the moment you make the person feel that they were very stupid enough to raise a concern, or it's not relevant, they should stop, the people will stop. Not just on that one issue, but they will stop on everything. They are still in the room, still attending, still saying yes, yes, no, no, yes, sir, no, sir. And but they have quietly left the conversation. And that silence of someone who used to speak the uncomfortable truth, the silence of someone raising the issues and decided to stop is very much more dangerous than the silence of not knowing what to say. Because you can't hear it, the dashboard still look fine, everything is happening good until the system starts to break, until the people starts to leave. So yes, silence is bad, but own it to that silence. Just say that you don't have the answer, but you have heard the question, and just not stop there. Go back and work on that issue. Maybe find a reason, find a solution. Don't blame people, but find the actual reason what's stopping the person who failed actually. So that is, I think that would be my answer to the question. Thank you for the question. It's very interesting.
So we'll move ahead with another part of the book. So I have another question from there. So
Maybe we can ask the audience if anyone has any question before we move.
yes, definitely. So we are like in the middle of the book now. Two parts we have tried to cover it, and I would like to request if anyone have any question with the experience they have, they can ask what they have gone through in their organization, or you can also type the question in the chat box. That also works.
Hey Pratik, hey Rini, can you hear me?
Yes, Professor.
Rini, we had chatted briefly over WhatsApp. I had requested a copy of your book.
Yes.
I read a few chapters. I could not read the whole book. And even when I was reading that and now I'm hearing to you, could you make the distinction between behavioral aspects of people or incompetence or inexperience of people who are in places of leadership or who are the boss or who are even employees versus aspects that are systemic? So I'm just trying to make that, because in your examples, a lot of examples hint at behavioral aspects. So presently, for example, I am sitting, you're in France, we are in Europe. We understand systems in Europe. Governance systems in Europe are slightly better than they are in India in some
Exactly.
aspects. And I believe that is down to the complexity of the respective systems and the behavioral training with regards to the complexity. So in India, the government office is dealing with a much larger density and diversity of people versus in the European context. And so their experience also is similarly, the level of training the officer receives for this level of complexity is also much higher in European context versus in the Indian context. Like we have a big gap between the training that an IS officer receives and anybody below him receives. So he's supposedly at a much higher level of frameworks, but everybody else is dealing with very basic tools of management and basic tools of this. So just trying to get the differentiation between the systemic aspects of the situation, the structural aspects, and where it is about simply that the competence and complexity are not matching with each other.
It's a very interesting question. Thank you so much. So I'll respond in different parts if I will be able to remember. So the first thing, in Europe, I agree that we see that structure is very much better organized compared to India. But if you see, like I'm sitting in France, and I don't think it's very much. I think it's the similar kind of things. People at the senior level in the government, the France, I think they don't have the basic computer using competence. They don't know how to log in or how to reply on the net or everything. This are still working on the paper. So I think when you talk about the behavioral of the aspects of the people who are like not very much educated or skilled or all that thing, I think that is one of the aspects of the structure. I will give you an example. I will be sharing you an example from one of the respondents, and I hope they don't recognize themselves from the audience. So one of the respondents is a retired person from one of the corporate worlds, and so he was talking to me about what happened when the computers were introduced. So he's a very senior person. He was a very senior person. And when the computers were introduced for the first time some 20, 30 years ago, you know what happened. So that time it's not a skill thing. It's like you are at a very senior position and you are not you are skilled for that position, but because of the changing technology and all, you're not skilled enough to use the computer. Now when you say that they don't have enough training and everything, this person, he was too old to even go join these trainings, or to even ask for these trainings. And even if they provided the training, he was at the age where he was not very available to do these trainings. So that is a structural thing. If he had just raised the voice, given the feedback, and the team has heard that, okay, I'm not the person to work on computer, maybe I am better for the decision making or strategy making, someone else works on the computer and I work on the strategic part. That would have been a structural performances. So when you are trying to match it with the behavior thing, that because it's not working because the person was not skilled enough, again you're putting a blame. What I'm trying to say is it's not a blaming, it's not the fault of the person. It's the system that has trained us for I don't know how many years since colony, that you are not supposed to raise the question of whatever is wrong, and you have to just go ahead with it. I agree that there are people sitting at the higher positions who have no idea what is happening, and they are there because again the system is fueling the people who just butter up to them and are still in the system, because if they go ahead and say something, they upset them, they will start to lose their job. So this is all the structure that is happening. This is all the system. I'm not blaming the system, I'm just saying that this is what exists. And the first step towards this is to acknowledge that this is a system. This is not corruption. This is not something that is blaming thing. It's about creating a structure where people are comfortable, which is people have the performance and the governance separated, that they can raise the voices without getting penalized for raising the voice. And the people who are not actually working, they are getting the correct punishment or correct thing on how, without disabling the system. I don't know if that made sense.
Uh, yeah, maybe just one clarification.
Yes.
Maybe I did not pose my question as aptly as I would like. So I was hinting towards more the complexity of the system vis-a-vis the level of competence on training is provided. So I think the mismatch was not to point out the lack of skill, but also the differences in complexity. And also when you say the people, like on the one side we have examples where certain officers did not want to vacate the position because they were getting certain benefits out of that position,
Yeah.
for example in the
Yeah.
Karnataka project. So that
In
is
the similar,
clearly
yeah.
a corrupt behavior, right? Those officers were behaving in a corrupt manner, so there it was down to the individual who was taking that decision.
I
So
would say it's not okay. It's a corruption, but why is that happening? Because the system is allowing them to have that corruption. The system, the governance is putting down the subsidies and everything, but there is no checks and balances, and as a result, the corruption is happening. So that is a systematic problem. Even the public,
mm,
there is no direct communication between the government and the farmers, that the government can directly talk to the farmers that I'm sending this much money and are you receiving or not. So that is again the communication, the TRF loop that I'm talking about, that there are feedback, the transparency is not there, and the entire trust is placed on that official who is pocketing the money. Now when you talk about the complexity, I agree. As you grow in the organization, as you touch the once you become the best performers, the complexity increases, because you have the performance pressure, you have the fear architecture pushing in. And with all that, now everything else takes a back seat. Any voice raising, everything takes a back seat. Every complexity gets moved towards the bottom line. Everything is now focused to the profit, does not care who is skilled enough, who is not skilled enough. As far as the results are coming in, the system is thrown out of the window, and that is the entire base of the book that I'm talking about. So I understand the complexity and the behavioral thing, and that is exactly what is I'm trying to explain, that this exists, but this is something that is going to exist until and unless we touch the governance and the complexity of the system.
Thanks.
If you're still not convinced, we can go ahead on another call, and I can, maybe we talk about the real numbers, and then I can show you what is happening.
No, I think we are talking at a level of abstraction where it is difficult to find common ground. But
Okay.
I kind of understand what position you're taking, but I would look for more concrete examples to frame the situation. But
Okay.
thanks. I think it's a brave effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move ahead. So I have another question for you, Rini. You write in your book about the organization's most dangerous moment uh, is often during its best financial year. So why does the strong performance hide the weak governance? Can you please
I
explain
think
that?
this is kind of the same question that our senior just asked. It's more
Yeah.
on the same line,
Okay.
right? Okay, I'll try to answer it with some examples. I'll try to answer it in a simpler way. So I'll share another story. Respondent of mine, like again, it's another story. So he or she joined a company which was best performing for 5 years straight, like the best thing, complex structure and everything, top of every department, every metric, every comparison, again top. So 5 years of green dashboards. By the time the person joined, in 2 years everything collapsed. Now the customers were leaving, the teams were leaving, audits were failing. So when he was asking about the behavioral aspects of the skills thing, this is where it comes in, because your skills can take you up to a limited level, but after that time, once the system fails, you get to see the results. The hierarchy is changing, nothing goes good is left. So what happened in those 5 years? When nobody was watching for the fragility, like everything was going good, the numbers were best. Every shortcut, every compromise, every problem that was raised was getting pushed to the next quarter. It was all getting absorbed in the good numbers. The strong performances just don't hide the weak governance. It actually funds it. By the time it reaches the cracks, by the time it starts to crack out, it's very difficult to explain. So I found the same pattern in the field research. The municipal corporation, one of the best, the top reputation and everything. They had everything that you can think of. They had the storm drains, they have the water recycling, everything was there. But beneath that, what was happening, they were diverting the water to the corporate use, and people were going to the private vendors just because the public system was not reaching them. Again, a complex system, you have different people, different stakeholders coming in. So from outside, it's looking like a very model system, model city, everything is perfect. But from inside, the drift is happening very slowly, very, very much hidden from the reputation till it cracks. So that is why I'm saying the best year or the best organizations, like the best performances, are the most dangerous year, not because something is wrong with success, but because it removes your attention from what you should be looking at. That thing becomes a sideline.
Like my like uh like I'm working in an organization where everything, like my dashboards are green. I have a profit. uh, then if I'm the CEO of any company, for example, so if everything is going good, so why should I then like why should I have to fear of anything? Or if it's working for me, it's working for me. So
So
what
yeah,
is
if
your
it's working, it's working. You're right. In short term, it works. Everything is good. You have no reason to be looking for something else. But the real question is not whether it's working or it's sustainable. The question is who actually pays for it once it starts to fail. It's working for you right now, but once it starts to break, once the customers start to lose the trust, once the audit starts to catch all the shortcuts one by one, once the employees start getting a hint of the problems and start leaving, who is going to take all the hit? Like the public is getting compromised service. So personally, I think CEO should not worry because he has already grown, he has changed everything, but the reputation is not as clean and as easy to move as the job titles. Once something breaks, the hierarchy shift. people are always going to come back and ask who was running this when this starts to broke, like when this all started. So yes, if it works for now, but that was never really the question. The question that I am asking in the book, in my research, is what does it cost, who pays the cost, and whether anyone in the room is honest enough to say it loud before the bills come out. So I have another question for the audience. In one word, what does the winning hide in your organization? Like, what do you think that when everything is going good, what is it that you're losing?
Like if you have read the book, you will have the answer for this. Otherwise, you will have a different answer to it. So I have the answer actually.
So we have a comment, weakness. So winning hides weakness. Okay. So we have a question from Suresh sir with respect to a black swan events which disrupt the existing order. There'll be game changes now. Like AI is a big disruption. I think I didn't notice when it came, so I don't have the background. Suresh sir, if you can explain by the time people are responding to the question.
So really, Suresh sir can jump in whenever he is online, so we can go with the answers for the question which you have posted.
So we have two answers in the comments: weakness and disagreements. So yeah, if you're winning, the people will not listen to the weaknesses, not look at the weakness or the disagreements. Is there anyone else responding, or should I just disclose? Okay, the real people who did it: recognitions, customer, weakness, fear architecture. So this is, I think, yours.
So yeah, so I have question to it, so you can then explain what it is. Like when you argue that the governance failures aren't usually caused by the bad or the corrupt leaders, but the capable leaders who are afraid. So how does the good judgment applied under pressure systematically build what you call the fear architecture? In your book, you have explained about it. Can you please take us through that? Then we can have the question of Suresh sir. He has responded in the chat.
Okay. So I'll very quickly, like very easily explain what is the fear architecture I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just picture that someone is walking with a gun behind your back. Like, yeah, so you walk very fast, you're going exactly where you are told, not because you want to, but you know there is a gun behind your back. Now take the gun away, the person has left, but he's still saying, take the bullets away, but he's still saying, go ahead, do this, do this, do this, and you will do that. Not because, no, nobody's holding the gun, but you will still do that because you have a fear that there is a gun. You don't know if it's still there or not, but it's in your head. You have that fear. I'll give you another example, very famous example. So you have the elephants that you see in Jim Corbett and everything, and you all must have seen the big giant elephant tied with this thin rope onto the pole, not even at a very thin pole, which any one of us know that if the elephant snatches, it can break it. But I think we all agree elephant is very strong, but why not? What is stopping it? So because before the rope, he was tied to a electric or a very spiked one. So every time he's trying to break free, he gets hurt. Up to a point that now he realizes every time, like he has so internalized that pain that now with a simple thin rope, he is going to stay there. even if the rope is not tied to something, because he's very much afraid. He's so trained with fear that if he tries anything, it will get hurt. So I have watched capable managers build exactly like this, not because they were corrupt, but because very simple, they were looking after their own position. They have in the history seen that if they take one step back, they lose their position. There is always a race for promotion. There is always a race for title to be seen. The managers are not the bad people, I'm not saying that, but they are doing everything that makes sense to them in their career. When the respondent said that he was leaving, when he tried to say that, I'm tired of taking the blame, the manager promised the person that, okay, I will give you a position in another team, stay with me. But as soon as the respondents left, he found that the another team also is failing. It's not just one team or one specific situation, it's the entire system structure. The manager is just saving his seat on the rat race, that he's not trying to do that on purpose. He's not hiding something. It's just the information that is reaching him. The people below him are also very very clever, that I have to save my seat, I have to rise up to his level, so I will not be sharing more. So that is the fear architecture. That is not one bad decision. That is small decisions taken multiple times, each one of them making sense to the person who is making them. It's a very rational decision, and all that is building up a wall that nobody planned, nobody can see. So yeah, that is the fear architecture.
Thank you, Rini. So, Suresh sir have actually responded about what he was trying to say. So he was mainly talking about the Black Swan event, uh, which overtakes the current thinking strategy or in many organizations. So this cannot be foreseen. So is what
Yeah.
he was looking at through the question he was mentioning.
No, I agree that once the black swan hits, everything falls out. It's mostly the same thing. I agree. Thank you so much, sir.
So
I think
I found someone raised the hand, Chidambaram sir. Or...
Yeah, actually, I have one question. You just mentioned that the seeds of downfall are sown at the time when the organization is doing very well. Why this is happening, and what should be done to prevent this?
I didn't catch the question. Pratik, did you get the question?
Yeah, I will repeat for you.
Yes. Yes,
You
please.
mentioned that the downfall of an organization starts at the time when the organization is doing very well. That the seed,
Yes.
the
Yes.
seeds were sown at the time when the organization is doing very well. So
Yes.
why it is happening? What can be done to prevent this situation?
You have to read the book for that, sir. So, because that is the entire base of the book. There are so many things that goes into it. The transparency, trust, feedback is one of these factors. Then the fear structure that we just discussed in another. Then there is something called silent fragility. So all these things are entering into that. So why it's happening, why the downfall happens when you are at the top? Because in very simple terms, that is the point when you are making so much that you stop giving attention to the things which are coming from the ground, that this is not working, this is failing, and you start dismissing that. Like when I say you, I'm not saying you, but in a general practice, maybe there are people who still listen. But when you are in that big competition, that if I diverge a little energy from here to the another thing, maybe I will lose the competition. So all the things which are coming to you from the bottom up, it is getting filtered at every level. Like the very operational person is facing something, he's raising the point for the first time. The manager thinks, okay, this is good, but when I have to show it to the senior level, I have to show it in a way that does not show incompetence on mine. The manager shows it to the senior level. The senior level then prepares some presentation for the CEO and them, and he only have 2 or 3 minutes with the senior level, with the executives, because they are so busy with the market running and everything. So they have, in 2 minutes they have to show everything, and this crisis which is coming from downside, if they focus on that, that is going to show overshadow all the achievements that is happening. So they will just highlight it as something that needs to be, taken care of, some red flag or something that, when you get back to it, you can look after it. So there is a lot of translation happening in the hierarchy in a very big corporation, and once it accumulates at that level, the person at the operation level who was raising the queries, when he sees nothing is moving, he starts taking the decision which he thinks at his level is able to operationalize to make it work, but that is not sustainable in the long run. And we all know, we have all said the same thing, that once the things move towards non-sustainable short-term things, everything is bound to fail.
The second question is how we can avoid this type.
Sorry, what can be done?
What can be done
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
yeah.
this type of mistakes do not happen?
I think the best thing would be to differentiate between the performance thing and the governance thing. The feedback, the escalations, all of these things are kind of your governance. They are telling you that how healthy your governance is. People combine this with the performance. If I'm raising a question, if I'm raising something that this is not working well, I get blamed. You are not doing the work. My performance review gets a hit, and I am being thrown out. So I stop raising the question. You have to build a structure. So there is an example. There is a case study of an aircraft where they have hired a third party who is taking the care of all this governance, taking the feedback, giving the concrete steps to the hierarchy to take. So that way they are differentiating the governance and the performance. The people are performing well. The performance is not based on how good you are buttering up, but it's also listening to the feedback coming from the ground with an open mind, no filtration, with concrete steps, with the time dedicated to look into it. Because sometimes what happens, for example, I'll give you one example. People have increased the meetings, for example, that was going to happen because there is some issue that was highlighted. So you have, instead of one meeting a week, you get having 2-3 meetings a week, and you see after a month everything gets resolved, and then you stop having those meetings. So you had a problem, you solved it, and then you stopped. So do you think it is going to sustain?
So that means you're saying that personal this performance system should be de-linked with the governance system. It's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Right?
That is one of the steps. And the second step is, most of you are all sitting at the senior positions. Most of you already have taken the good decisions. You have faced a problem and you have found a solution. But I am 80-90% or maybe 100% sure that you stopped after a particular point of time. It solved the problem that you found, and then you stopped it. I'm just requesting that you continue with that thing. You don't stop it. You have to embed it into the system. How the bad habits get embedded. For example, the shortcuts. So one person took a shortcut, then the next person coming after him does not know why he took the shortcut, but that is something internalized, and that has become a normal. So just normalize the solution that you have found into the system, not making it a project based, but something that is long lived, long term, and without an end line. Like it's kind of system health score kind of a thing. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
I hope,
Thank you.
I don't know if you agree with it or not.
Yeah, you are right. But that makes a lot of changes in the organization.
So that is
It's the right time.
No, for that thing only. You don't have to, if you make a change overnight, it's going to disrupt the entire system. So I'll give you one example from the book I just remembered. You have the informal grapevine and you have your formal meetings happening. So you realize that near the coffee table, near, in the corridors when people are walking, you have a different storyline going around. And when the same people enter the boardroom with you to discuss in the points are not raised, or they are getting, very softened in the language that, okay, we do. Right. So what do you do? Because if you go ahead and confront them, it's going to break up. Instead, it's very simple. You have the document in front of you, very cleverly you ask them, okay, what about this thing which was happening? Just only one thing. And don't ask them that you heard the thing, because if once you say that you heard about this thing, that grapevine for you also blocks away. The person who gave you the grapevine, that person gets blacklisted. So you need access to that grapevine, and you have to build that grapevine into your formal discussions. You have to gain the trust of the people to come to you back and talk to you. So you ask one question very quietly and you don't focus much on it. Just notice how the people are moving. Are they opening up yet? Are they not opening? If they're opening up, what kind of feedback is coming? Can you work on it? Can you not work on it? So you work, you try to be very open. Yes, I can work on it. I need time to work on it. Go back, work on it, come back. Next meeting, give feedback, have a 5 minutes discussion, raise another point that you found. So it's a very incremental, very cautious thing that has to be done. I think all of people here are very intelligent, very experienced. So I think you understand how I'm trying to say, but it's a very delicate thing. Trust once like losing a trust is very easy, but getting back trust is very delicate and very lengthy process. So thank you for the question. It was very interesting.
Actually, when I was Chidambaram sir, when I was reading the book, actually at the end, in the middle I was there, so I asked Rini, I'm reading your book, but till now I'm not getting any solution. So is there a solution which you will be giving at the end of the book? So in the middle only I was curious, so I asked her. So when I read it, so as Rini already mentioned during her talk that there is no proper solution for each one, but there is a structure how we can go and how we can resolve it. So there is a structure you will find when you will read the book that will help you. Which she also mentioned while talking about the silent fragility and softening the language at the end when she was explaining you. So I will request uh, to read the book. So you will all find it very interesting, uh, and you will able to connect it with what you are working, be it a junior level manager or a senior manager. So it connects you from the bottom to the top. So for the management people, yeah.
That is the vertical dilemma, Pratik. You have the bottom and the manager sitting in the same line.
Yeah. Uh, so if anyone don't have any of the question,
So someone is saying this is like in one case study, no solution given. I would like to ask you a question. Do you think there is a solution to the systematic, the framework for thinking and going about a solution is the best? Yes, I agree.
yes. So I would request Ritesh sir to uh, please give a closure to the meeting. Yeah.
And if you would like to share, like if you're taking something from today, what's one thing that you think you'll take from today? We are at the end now. We are over the time actually. Thank you to everyone who listened and came. It was a pleasure to speak.
Thank you, Rini and Pratik. This was a very engaging, one of sessions in the last few weeks, and I think there were questions which came from audience, which was also very engaging. And I think, Rini, you did a good job in trying to explain most of it. Though I think most of us, including me, haven't read the book. But thanks for doing this session. I hope the audience here got benefited from the talk. And Pratik has shared the links to the book. If anyone is interested, they can, of course, buy that book. And at IRMA, particularly these sessions, we are open to feedback. If you have any further queries or you want to contact Rini, it's easy. We will put this YouTube video on our website and share the link. After you complete the book, feel free to contact Rini, and I hope Rini will be happy to answer those questions.
And I would be more than happy to have the feedback because this is the first time I've written a book, so I don't know if it's making sense.
And Pratik, thanks for the wonderful moderation you have done. You were very patient. You took the questions and you prepared well in advance, and also you took the questions from the audience to make sure everything is covered up. And to the audience, thanks for taking your time on a weekend away from your family and other commitments which you have. I will close this session now, put the video on YouTube, and hope to see you in our next month's talk. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.